Welcome to another episode of the Business Conversations. Today, I am joined by the one and only Josh Fedie. Josh, welcome to the show.
That's right. There's only one of me, man. Thank God for that. Thank God for that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, man. Okay, so we're just gonna riff here about all things sales, specifically, buyer enablement, but we'll get there. Just to set the stage, we're starting to see a lot of companies really reimagine their relationship with sales and marketing, right? And now we're starting to see folks introduce customer success under kind of the same umbrella, right? They're just, how do these three orgs work together? Some of it's, just looking for opportunities for them to work closer together. Some of them are actually restructuring their organization to put those functions under one leader. And, just talking with folks as they think about 2023 and, moving into what I would call challenging economic times, which I think are actually a good thing. How should a leader zoom out and think about, okay, if I could rebuild my sales org from scratch, what would it look like? So that's kind of our broader theme that we're going to be discussing. But before we dive in, I just want to establish your credibility, man. So give us the elevator pitch for Sales Reach.
Oh, man. I have to establish my credibility. I don't know if I can do this. No, listen, I've been in sales for over 20 years now. It's my passion. I love sales. The thing about me, though, is that I've always thought more creatively as well. And so I was a salesperson that I always kind of dreamed of growing up to be a marketer. But I was the salesperson on the playground that the marketers made fun of, right? Because when I started in sales, it was the message from marketing was stay in your lane, right? This is not your job. Don't try to come up with a tagline. Don't try to make some graphics. Don't try to make content. Don't try to write anything that any customer would ever see. Just use the stuff we give you, right? That was hard for me because I'm a creative. And so the business here really just came from my desire to be a little bit more active with the customers and with the generation of business of those prospects, right? I started realizing that there's certain content that I can create. There's certain things that I can organize better. There's certain ways that I can deliver on an experience, on a promise that I make to somebody to like make it easier for them to work with me. Those are things that no teams were really focusing on at the time when I started putting this together. And that's really what this became, is Sales Reach. It's a buyer enablement platform. You mentioned that term earlier already in this podcast. You probably had some people listening going, what's buyer enablement, right? Outside of people that me and you are both connected to, They all know buyer enablement at this point. Buyer enablement it's not just one of those tchotchke terms. It's really an important thing. The term came from a Gartner article that was published about 6 years ago now. It was published before I built the software that we built at Sales Reach. When we built Sales Reach, I didn't know what to call it because there weren't really any things like it on the marketplace. There were like little things that were kind of similar, but whatever. I don't want to get all crazy there, but there wasn't a ton of stuff. So I didn't even know what to call it. And then I read this article and the article said the number one challenge in B2B sales right now is buyer confusion. And it went into why this confusion exists, how buyers buy today, how they're going to our websites, downloading their own information, gathering their own insights. At the time, I think the stat was the buyer is 70% through their journey before they reach out to sales. Now I think the stat is closer to 80. Like they're going further and further without sales. And they said that what we need to focus on is buyer enablement. And I was like, boom, that's what we've built here. That's what that is. And so I think for anyone that's like asking, okay, let's make it simple. What is buyer enablement? Here's in my mind what the difference is. Sales enablement. That's the term everybody talks about all the time. If you look at sales enablement tools, there's a lot of them in the marketplace. The bulk of sales enablement tools are created to help internal teams work faster, and better. So
Mhm.
when you're talking about earlier sales and marketing teams working together, customer success and marketing, customer success and sales working together, all operating under this CRO banner, right? This whole revenue team. That's what sales enablement tools are. It's mainly an internal focus. It's me, me, me. And what do we know in sales? What are we taught all the time? Stop talking about you. No one
Mhm.
cares about you. Your customers don't care about you. They care about their motives. They care about their time. They care about protecting their time, and they care about looking intelligent to their coworkers, right?
Mhm.
So that's what a buyer enablement tool is. It just organizes the process. It gives them a digital sales room, a portal where they have the things that they need, where they can better communicate and advocate internally so that there's no confusion in the complexity of the deal. Because I'll just end with this, and I've gone off on a tangent and I've answered half of your question and half of your next question at this point, probably, but that's what I do. You know this about me,
Mhm.
right?
Which is good. Which is good. That's what we're here for.
But I've said this so many times, and it's so true. If you think selling is hard, try being a buyer.
Mhm.
And I believed that to be true before the pandemic hit. That's why we started building Sales Reach 6 years ago. But 3 years after we started building it, 2 years after we launched, this pandemic hit. And it's never been more true than it has been since that moment. Because prior to the pandemic, the average review committee was 9 individuals. And prior to the pandemic, those 9 individuals could say, hey, let's meet in suite B down the hall and hash this out. Let's look through the documents we have. Let's look at the various companies that we're reviewing. Let's make a group decision on this. They could literally do that in person together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then the pandemic hit and everyone's working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And not only was the review team still at least 9 people, the average bumped up to 14. What? Why do we need, why are we throwing more logs on this fire? This was already a hard decision when we were all together in person. Now we're going to double it? What? This is crazy. So this is where we have to just fundamentally understand that the way people buy has changed. And because the way people buy has changed, we need to change the way we're communicating to them, not just the way we're selling to them. This is what you want to get into with this is the rise of the CRO, the person that's responsible for revenue. I talk a lot about customer-facing teams. All people in a customer-facing team are in a place where they are responsible for sales. All of them, right? Like that's the battle cry. We are all in sales. We're all in sales. Everyone, right? So I'll jump off my soapbox for a minute here and let you talk again. All right. But that's what I'm seeing, man.
Well, dude, I'm just queuing you up for the next question, which is, for another riff here. So we've established by that the buying cycle or sales cycles have evolved, right? The way that customers typically buy, where salespeople typically don't see what's happening on that side of the fence, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's evolved. That's changed. Another thing that has changed is buying cycles have gotten much more complex and much longer, right? So, even from you hinted at it, like customers are doing their own research. You're looking up the people that get mentioned in, that are on the email chain. They want to know all these players before, making a decision, right? And so, all that being true, sales typically, if you talk to like old school, old hats, like sales guys, they'll tell you it's a numbers game, baby, right? Like it's a numbers game. So how, with this new change, how does one go about identifying the companies that you want to go after, right? And the individuals in those companies, and do it at a volume that's necessary to, maintain the quotas that, you got to hit?
Oh man, there's so much here. There's so much here. Okay. Number one, I always love the saying the riches are in the niches, mainly because I'm a big fan of rhymes, right?
Yep.
So, and I think about that slogan a lot when I'm thinking about the ideation of businesses, but I also think about that slogan a lot when I'm thinking about my prospecting efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I do think that there's a tendency so frequently of people in a business development role to try to cast this really, really, really wide net, and for it to be this numbers game, and for it to be this whole like, hey, I just got to smile and dial. I got to send out 1,000 emails today. I got to get on and like a 1,500 posts on LinkedIn today. I got to do all this. And honestly, I've always disagreed with that strategy. I always have. Even when it was unpopular to disagree with that strategy, I disagreed with that strategy. I mean, I can't even tell you how many manager meetings I had to sit through where my sales manager was telling me, hey, Josh, we're looking at the numbers. You're making only 20% of the phone calls that the rest of this team is making. You only sent 5 emails yesterday all day. What are you doing with your day? And I'd always just turn around and say, okay, but look at the board. Look at the numbers on the board, right? I mean, I wasn't always the top salesperson. I would never say that, but I was always up there. And many times I was the top salesperson, right? Mm-hmm. And it was always this, why do we think that we just need to do this just to do this? Why do we feel like if we haven't broken a sweat at the end of the day that we didn't do what we need to do to be successful? Because that's inaccurate. Mm-hmm. What I believed at that time and what I still believe today, and what is proven now, what is the popular opinion now, is that the more personalized you can be in your efforts, the more targeted you can be, and you're always going to be better, right? So you don't need to make 100 phone calls a day. Make 10 really smart phone calls a day. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I mean by smart is, what are the companies that you're working with? What are the industries you're working with right now that are turning out to be your best fit customers? Mm-hmm. Find more companies that are like that. How are you getting in front of those companies? Well, I'm a big fan of always starting from the top. I love calling the president or the CEO of a business. I do. I just love doing it. It's a cocky, arrogant thing to do. But most people are afraid to do it. So I just love starting at the top because usually the person at the top says, Josh, I'm flattered. Thanks for reaching out to me. But I'm not the one you want to talk to. And the funny thing is, they're actually the easier ones to call because they get less calls than anybody because no one wants to call them. Right. So they typically, I'm not the one you want to talk to, but hey, you want to talk to Bill or you want to talk to Judy or you want to talk to whoever. Right. Mm-hmm. I love that because then I call Bill or Judy and I say, hey, Dan told me to reach out to you. Oh, really? Well, yeah. Yeah. And if Dan said to, if your CEO told me to call you, you should probably take my call, right? Yeah, I probably should. So anyway, find those ideal fit customers, find those lookalike companies, right? If you find an industry where you're really excelling, spend the bulk of your time just staying in that industry. Don't let the shiny objects distract you, right? It's like if you're working in aerospace, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but you know what would be really cool? I'm really into computers. So I'm going to go after just technology companies for this whole month. Yeah, but you're really proficient in aerospace. Like, why would you take your eye off of that prize? You can show them how viable you are to their needs in that space. So just stay there, just hammer that all day long until you've exhausted it entirely, and then start to find some other areas that maybe you can branch out to if you need to, right? So number one, be smart with it. Number two, though, I'm a big fan of, I think that a lot of people do a lot of research before they reach out to a company. I think a lot of people do more research than they need to do. I'm going to say it. This is controversial right now because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, no, you got to be hyper personalized. You got to call out their recent press release. You got to call out their recent job transition. You got to call out their new CEO. You got to call out their shareholder meeting announcements. Do you, though? Seriously, do any of those things matter? At the end of the day, when you're trying to engage with somebody, it should only be because you feel in your core that what you're bringing to the table will be of value to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's true, if what you're bringing to the table is of value to them, then what does it matter if you read their most recent press release? What does it matter?
Right.
You know where they work, you know what they do. Like, do the basics, go to their website, understand what they do. You shouldn't be calling them if you don't know what they do. But like, you don't need to know their puppy's name. That's stupid. Like, it's a waste of your time. It's too much intel. And I can't tell you how many salespeople I've worked with in my career in more of a training capacity that get so angry and frustrated and they want to quit the job and they want to go into marketing because they don't want to be in sales anymore because I just spent 45 minutes researching this company. I knew everything about them and I knew what their recent funding round was. And I knew what kind of car the CEO drove and I knew, and then they hung up on me.
Oh.
Yeah, of course they hung up on you. Because 99 of 100 people that you reach out to are going to hang up to you, either physically on a phone or by putting your email into spam or by not responding to your LinkedIn connection request or, right? So like when I say hang up on you, I'm not talking about literally the phone. I'm just talking about like, listen, it takes on average, what is the average now? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 9. I think the average right now is 9 touch points before anyone will respond to your messages to them. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
It's in the ballpark, but think about that now. What's a touch point? Right? I mean, God, so many things. You could send a video, you could send an email, you can make a phone call, you can send a LinkedIn connection request, you can like their post, you can comment on their post, you can comment on someone else's post and tag them in the post. Like all of those things are the modern day touch point.
Right.
But we need to do 9 of them before anyone's going to come back to you. And you can't do that. You cannot successfully incorporate 9 touch points in a meaningful way if you're doing a spray and pray. The only way you're going to do that is if you are focused and targeted on a list that is manageable of ideal fit companies that you are going to hell or high water. I'm going to make these happen. If these don't happen, I'm going belly up because I'm only going to allow myself to focus on these things because I cannot do the things I need to do the way I need to do them if my net is 50,000 people big. It's impossible.
Yeah, I think it's what's worth double clicking on there is, you know, the through line that you mentioned is niching down, right? Because now you understand the pain point of your ideal buyer. You understand their industry. You understand, you know, how they make purchasing decisions, right? Because it's going to be similar. And if you're doing your job right and your company is successful in that niche, you have quality stories that you can share with those people about the value that you bring to the organization, right? So that's like point number 1 is, you know, really, really narrowing the focus and understanding your buyer. The second thing is, when you talked about like multiple touch points and the idea of getting hung up on, you know, the spray and pray approach, there's also a level of like frequency, right? Like if you are a sales rep, which is what was trendy, I want to say right after COVID, you know, digital touch points became like super like trendy and accessible.
Yeah.
But if you are the person that is putting out a generic message and hitting people in every possible place, by the time you get them on the phone, they're either freaked out, pissed off, or are like, look, man, like, or just shut it down right away. Like, please take me off your list, right? Like,
yeah.
They're annoyed to the point of not wanting to engage with you. So it really does require you to be more empathetic, to really understand your buyer, your persona, and just be comfortable in your own skin where you know what works best for you. Like, for, you know, you mentioned like you always call, right?
Yeah.
I'm a pick up the phone kind of guy too. But I also have an email that I'm, you know, ready to go, because when I call, I'm probably interrupting them.
Yeah.
Right. So
they're always on their way to a meeting.
Always. Right. So when I say like, look, I have your contact info.
Yeah.
You know, I know you're probably in the middle of something. I'm going to shoot you an email with some information, and I'm going to follow up with a phone call. So you kind of let them know what they can expect. Like, I find like 9 out of 10 times, they'll at least like positively respond, even if the response is not right now, I'm not the right person, or something along those lines. But it's never, dude, who are you and why are you like, assaulting me within an inch of my life? It's always like, look, I understand that you're in a sales role, and let's at least have a conversation so I can understand what it is that you're doing, because I start with their pain and work backwards.
Listen, the shorter you can make your emails, the better. That is what I am 100% convinced of at this point. I see people writing novels trying to get every point out in their emails. It doesn't matter. So with the idea of niching down, also niche down the actual message that you're sending to someone.
Right.
Like, if you can't list the three challenges that most likely are plaguing the people that you want to engage with, if you can't list those three things, then choose a different industry to go after. It's a bad fit for you, right? And you don't understand it, so you don't have a reason to play in that space. And you don't even have to mention all three of them. You can mention one of them, because here's the thing. Here's the thing that I definitely know. People don't ever respond. I shouldn't say don't ever. People rarely respond to you because they're curious, because they're like, I got nothing else going on. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes what you've created, the experience of reaching out to them, has been so impactful that that's why they reach out. And that's why I built the platform I did, was the hope that more people could do that. But most of the time, the reason people respond is because they either literally just had a conversation at the office water cooler or over the digital office water cooler about how there's this challenge that they're looking to solve. And somebody posed the question, does anyone know of anything that could help us with X? And lo and behold, they sit down at their computer and an email comes through and says, are you looking to solve for X? Like, it literally just starts with that. It could be the worst email in the world. It could be 2 sentences long, but it could literally just say, are you looking to solve for X? That's what we do all day long. I'd love to have a conversation with you. As horrible as that email just was, if they literally just had that conversation and they're in the moment, they're going to respond to it, and they're going to respond and say, oh my God, I was just talking about this. Okay, tell me more. So timing is so important, right? And I think that that's why the spray and pray crowd felt like they were being successful, because in a spray and pray, you are going to catch some people in a moment of weakness. You just will, right? But and so that's why I think the spray and pray crowd still exists, and they always will, because they will always find success. The challenge is they don't understand how many people they have turned into the opposite of a fierce advocate, whatever that word is, right? Like, they've created a negative perception that is more memorable than the positive perception they were trying to create. And it's going to make it more challenging for them in the future. And that's a hard one right there. Right. So I think that the place that I think is important to go with this, based on kind of the queuing up in the beginning of this call and what we've kind of been riffing around here, I talked about how when I started in sales, marketing didn't want salespeople making creative, right? But if we're talking about the number one thing that I see impact revenue today, the number one thing, without any question, it is customer-facing professionals, whether they're in sales, customer success, onboarding, training, project management, whatever it is, anyone that engages with customers, that understands how to tell a story and to create a narrative around, so that they can bring people in to their bubble, right? Using on places like LinkedIn. That's like the best place for it right now, is LinkedIn primarily. Create that content. Create that intrigue. Be seen as an expert, because at the end of the day, you're going to get deals from this in 2 ways. Number one, you're going to be top of mind when someone you're connected to finally needs exactly what you're an expert in. You're going to be top of mind for that. But where I actually see more business is the second option, which is you're top of mind when someone you're connected to that follows your content has a conversation with someone that you've never met, that says, here's my honest challenge right now, because there's no guard up. We're just having a burger or whatever, right? Like, you're not selling me anything. Here's my challenge. And you go, oh, well, I know this guy, Josh, that has this company sales reach that I think I should connect you to that person. And I'm telling you, referrals from followers and referrals from active customers, that's the lifeblood of any business right now. It's the shortest deal cycle you'll ever have. It's the easiest deal you'll ever land, right? And it always leads to more business because it starts the ball rolling in a very positive way, where it's somebody did something kind and introduced me to you, and now I feel like I need to do something kind. And I like what you're doing, so maybe I'll introduce you to someone I know too. It's like the ball starts rolling, and that referral-based business just grows and grows and grows and grows. And before you know it, you're not sitting down, pounding the pavement or dialing and smiling or sending a boatload of emails. You're engaging thoughtfully with people on LinkedIn. You're creating content on LinkedIn, and people are coming to you and advocating for you because you're the one that educated them enough to understand that the problem that they're trying to solve for can actually be solved for.
You know what? That's a great point. And I think we should pull on this thread because, you know, I feel like it's generational. There are, you know, boomers that, and this, you know, I'm not disparaging baby boomers, because I'm the same way when it comes to TikTok. I have no idea. Like, I get it. There's a thing. It's you know.
Yeah, you won't find me on there. Don't worry.
You won't find me on there, right? Like, you have, you know, I see my son on, you know, Roblox, and he's doing his thing, and I'm like, hey, that's a thing, but it's not my thing, right? So that's the lens in which I'm saying this, because I remember when social media just came out, you needed a .edu to have a Facebook account. And it was seen as a thing that young people wasted time on. And now, like, LinkedIn is like a prerequisite for any professional that's out there, right? So when you think about it that way, I've been challenging people who are specifically people who are in sales roles, who are, you know, they're doing the cold outreach, because you can no longer sit back and wait for marketing to bring you quote unquote leads, right? Like, if you really want to control your revenue, you have to be proactive as well. And marketing should be supporting the sales team in being proactive in that outreach. But if the sales team wants to be effective in making contact, they have to be seen as subject matter experts, right? And that's where, you know, it's not just about creating content for the sake of content. It's, you know, the framework that I you know, recommend folks use is, in a sales role, you have one of three options. You're either going to get a 15-minute discovery call, a 30 to 45-minute conversation, or an hour call, right? What do you want people thinking about you before that call? And what do you want people thinking about you after that call? Because if you build your, and again, I'm not a fan of the term personal brand, because it's lost its meaning at this point.
That's why I haven't even used that term yet. Have you paid attention? I haven't used that word yet.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like it's establishing an online presence that can do your storytelling, to your point, position you as a resource, so that when people look you up, they're gonna Google you. They're gonna Google your company. They're gonna Google you.
Yes.
Do they see you as someone who understands their problem and can help them solve it?
You're not going to do anything today with anyone, business or personal, where you don't get Googled first before it happens. Believe that. It's true. I mean, listen, we in my personal life, through my kids, I'll meet new families and we'll plan events and stuff. You better believe I'm Googling these people before I get together with them. I don't care. I know they're Googling me. And I know they're Googling me because the last time we had an event with our kids, one of the mothers came up to my wife and said, I watched one of your husband's podcasts.
There you go.
Right? And I was like, what? She Googled me? I mean, and I do it to other people too. And here's the thing, because I think that we all, we want to have a level of trust. If it's business or personal, we want to have a level of trust with the people that we're going to be around. B, it's just too easy. Like, it's going to be an easier conversation starter if I can just quick Google someone and figure out what they do for a living or what they do for hobbies or whatever, right? Then I can try to find some similarities. So we don't have to have the awkward 10 minutes where we try to figure out where we're similar. I can just come right out with it. Like, hey, you know what? I found your Instagram. I saw that you're into skiing.
XYZ. Yep.
Whatever. Right? Really, really simple. But yes, you are 100% right. When somebody engages in a business way, right? If someone gets an email or whatever and says, hey, I'd like to meet with you, many, many, many people's first inclination is to quick look that person up. And I get more responses on connection outreaches on LinkedIn than I do on email. And so I primarily utilize LinkedIn as the conduit to introduce myself and to try to get a conversation started. Well, how easy is it when I'm already on the platform? Like, you just got a message from Josh. Josh says, I'd love to connect with you. Well, who the heck is Josh? All I got to do is click his name and I'm on his resume. I can see everything he's done for work. I can see all the things that he's posted. I can see all the comments he's made. I can get a really good, clear picture of who this person is, at least in a business sense, off of this page. Not everybody's sharing personal stuff on LinkedIn, but I think that you can still get a pretty good summary of who a person is and whether or not you want to engage with them just based on their activity. But one thing that I would love to just jump in with on this, creating your own original content on LinkedIn. That's one thing. It's in if you're proficient at it, and if you want to, like, if your core is like, you should do this, then do it. But I see a lot of people that listen to shows like this and they go, okay, I got to get on the bandwagon. I got to make a podcast, or I got to start making videos. And you know what? They're not comfortable. They're not comfortable doing any of it. And when they're not comfortable doing those things, the audience is uncomfortable watching or listening to that. It's true. It's true. So don't do that. And you do not have to do those things to be proficient on LinkedIn. I tell people this all the time. The number one thing you can do on LinkedIn, if you want to generate revenue and be seen as a thought leader, is to be the best comment on posts all day long. That's the best thing you can do. You don't have to be writing your own content all the time. Just be the best comment on posts, especially ones that are trending, all day long. Now, again, to your point, if you put up the best comment on a post, people are going to want to verify that you should even be providing any sort of education around that topic, right? Most of us don't want to just believe someone's an expert in something without knowing where they came from, right? Like, you would never go to a doctor's office if you knew that none of the doctors had actually gone to school to be a doctor. Like, you would never go to that doctor's office. Well, it's the cheapest one in town. Yeah, but you know what I mean? You're not a doctor, so you don't get to diagnose me, right? I don't know. I mean, medical bills are getting pretty high. I might go to that doctor's office, but regardless, we all want to trust before we take too much stock in anything. And so if you see someone with a fire comment, your next inclination is likely going to be to go to their LinkedIn profile and to see if that's someone you want to start following, or maybe someone you want to connect with. And before you hit that button, most people are going to go, all right, what was the most recent activity that they did? So you go to the most recent activity area on LinkedIn, you hit view all activity, you go to posts, and you see what their original thoughts are, right? And if it's someone that doesn't ever have any original thoughts of their own, they just love commenting on stuff, that's not going to be someone you want to follow. You might connect with them, but you're not going to want to follow them, right? Yeah. And there's a little less weight in it, at least for me. When I see someone that like just can't put out an original thought, I'm like, whatever. Like,
they're just resharing what marketing said. Like,
I know, just don't do that. But I do. It's so important to understand that is where your business is coming from. That is where the trust is coming from. there's a lot less marketing teams today that are getting in the way of customer facing individuals, specifically sales, creating that kind of content. Though I do still hear horror stories of companies where marketing says, we don't want you on LinkedIn. And it's like, okay, then you don't want this business to survive another 5 years, but that's fine. Right. And I'm going to quit, because it goes back to what you said before. Do you want to control your income or not? My earning potential, my finances are more important to me than to allow for my finances to only be dictated by what marketing can bring me.
Right.
I know that I can create the story. I know that I can create the buzz. I know that I can create the excitement. I want to be as active in that as humanly possible. And in a perfect world, it's not me on an island doing that. It's me working alongside marketing to explain what I'm hearing on the front lines when I'm talking to customers. When I see their faces light up when I say a certain thing, marketing needs to know that, right? So that I can come back to marketing and say, our homepage says this above the fold, but every time I say that, it's like people are falling asleep. But when I say this, which is something that we find on the 10th page of our website, hidden underneath this, that's when they start going, that's why we want to talk to you. Well, let's move that forward. And can you help me to create some things, not just marketing, like stuff that I can reshare, but like, can we start really talking about different types of content, different types of themes, different types of things that can support that, so that when I'm talking about that, the company's talking more about that, so that they see us as an aligned unit coming forward that understands what we actually do, right?
Right.
Like, that's it. That's, at the end of the day, that's the alignment we need. It's not just the alignment of this team working with this team and this team. It's the alignment in what we're saying. Like, we're all saying the same thing. We're all doing the same thing. We're all working towards the same goal here. And we all, and this is why I love why, talking about the CR, we're all in revenue. And we all, and businesses that are succeeding right now, without question, are the businesses that are seeing that as truth, that we are all part of a revenue team. We should not any longer have, that's marketing on that side of the building, and that's sales on that side of the building, but don't go over there because they drink too much and they're probably just going to try to get you to go golfing with them, right? Right. Customer success is in the basement because they don't need windows. Who cares? They're just on, calls all day.
They're just on chat, and yeah,
who cares, right? I mean, that's not, no, we if we were to be in offices more than we are right now, and there still are companies that are, but those teams should literally be in the same proximity. Right. They should be in the same meetings every morning. They should be in the same stand-ups. They should be really sharing that load and understanding this is where we are, this is where we need to go, and collaborating with each other on how we're going to get there, and not dismissing each other any longer. That is, I had the biggest bone to pick for so many years of my life. I don't anymore because I just don't care, right? Like, I put myself in a position where I get to do whatever I want every day, so I don't have to listen to anyone tell me I can't do anything, right? But that was my biggest bone to pick for many, many years, was the unwillingness of people in quote unquote creative roles in an organization to listen to people that are just salespeople. They're just, how many times have you heard that?
Oh man.
Just sales. They're just sales people.
Just a sales guy. Yep.
They're just sales guy. Okay, don't worry about him. You can still smell the liquor on his breath from last night. Don't worry about him. Like, that is the perception. That's the perception of sales. Yep. They do nothing all day, and then they entertain all night, and they rack up company debt, and they talk for a living. That's the perception of sales by so many people in creative spaces.
They just say whatever they need to close the deal, which again, it's to your point, like that is no longer the case, but the narrative has not caught up. Whenever you say someone is in sales, the first reaction, or we're still in that phase where you think used car salesman, which still blows my mind that we're still thinking that way.
Yeah.
And I think to the point you're making about like sales and marketing working closer together, I think the tactical way of executing that idea is centralizing around your sales pipeline, right? Because if sales and marketing are both looking at the same, what's the word I'm looking for? They're looking at the same, the same data, right? And they're going, all right, from sales is saying we are good on our Q1 goals. These deals that we have here, they're going to be good to go. Mm-hmm. These are the reasons why these deals look like they're going to close. Mm-hmm. All right. And marketing can say, okay, what did we do to get these deals to this point? Right. Mm-hmm. Then if you look at your prospects and you go, wow, our prospects are looking pretty light over here. So when these deals close and we reset in Q3, what are we going to do? Marketing should be going, all right, cool, sales. You concentrate on getting these over the line into win over in the win column or closed out.
Yep.
We'll make sure that there are more opportunities to have conversations around when that time comes. So the question then from marketing to be proactively asking sales is, what are you hearing? Right? Like, what are they saying? Yep. What's keeping them up at night? What objections are you having to overcome in order to get them over the fence? And, what's stopping them from, even having conversations with you? Do they not have time? Can we make it easier for them to read information that's going to help them, make a buying decision? Like, what do you need from us at each stage of the sales process to make that process easier so you can spend more time being more human and building those relationships?
And that's all we need, because I talk a lot about creating a repeatable sales process. A lot of organizations are looking for, how do we create a repeatable sales process? A lot of organizations are trying to figure out, like, how do we scale the efforts of the top performers? Like, how do we take whatever their process is and scale it? Mm-hmm. And I think that the really important thing to remember, it aligns with exactly what you're saying right now. The repeatable process portion of it is, what are the things that marketing can create that we find are most commonly necessary at certain intervals in the process and the discussions, right? Mm-hmm. There's parts we can't, and we need to be honest with ourselves about this. Mm-hmm. We need to be honest with ourselves about this in a content production space, in a what tools are we going to use as a sales professional space, in a who's going to be in the room for this. When I was working for other people on sales teams, if I was going to a first meeting pitch, even if it was a deal I had been working all by myself all this time, I never, ever, ever went by myself as the only sales professional, the only person with the title as sales. I would always find a colleague in the office that was the absolute opposite of me, that I could bring with me. And I'd just quick brief them on the way in. Because if I walked in the room and I met the CEO for the first time, and I realized that this CEO doesn't like people like me, people that are loud and animated, this comes across too salesy for him. He doesn't trust me to be detailed and to take the proper notes because I'm a little bit too space cadet. I'm a little bit too Chris Farley for him, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then I need the absolute opposite of me. Someone that is quiet, someone that's soft-spoken, someone like you, honestly, right? So, like, me and you are direct opposites. Like, if I was going to walk into a pitch right now, I would want someone like you to come in that room with me, because they're either going to respond well to me or they're going to respond well to you. But here's the thing that we know coming out of that meeting is that if they respond really well to me, it doesn't mean that we go and hire a bunch of people that are just like me. We learned that this customer responds well to someone like me in person. We're going to also learn that this other customer we're going to talk to next week isn't going to like me at all, and they're going to respond really well to you. And they might even ask you, hey, you don't need to bring Josh to the next meeting. Like, I've had that happen multiple times in my career. Mm-hmm. People are like, you're exhausting, man. You talk a mile a minute. We can't keep up with you. It's like being in a spin class when we get done with a meeting with you. Right?
Yeah.
And I get it. So there's certain things we just can't recreate. And when I say, when we're looking at the tools we're using, right? Here's a really important example. Yes, there is video as a part of my platform. So saying this might sound really ridiculous, but not everybody should be using video in their sales process. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Not everyone should.
Right.
There's a lot of people that aren't, that should be. I talk to a lot of people that aren't every single day that just should be. And for whatever reason, they're just nervous about getting started on it. But also, I have conversations with people all the time that are like, yeah, I've been using video and I never get any responses. I'm like, cool. You want me to review some of the videos that you've been sending out to people? Yeah, let's look at them. And I just have to be honest with them and say, listen, would you respond to that? That was hard. Like, I mean, I can connect you with some customers that I've had to have this come to Jesus conversation with, where I'm like, that was hard. That was hard for me to tolerate listening to that for more than 5 seconds. You were so uncomfortable that you made me feel uncomfortable. You were so uncomfortable that I have a stomach ache right now. I feel like I got heartburn, right? I don't ever want to see that video again. And if you send me another video email, there is no way I'm going to give it even a second, because that experience was horrible. And so when we're looking at tools, we need to we can't just look at the stats, like emails with video get 90% more click through. Okay, fine. But like 90% of your sales team is not proficient on video. I'm sorry, right? 30% of your sales team is going to be killer on video. 20% of your sales team is going to get by, right? And the other 50% is going to be a goose egg. Now, what we know is that video tools are very helpful, but we need to just be honest with ourselves and say, okay, well, tell you what, if you're not getting the response that you need, let's figure out other ways we can still incorporate video in your process, but maybe it's just not you doing it. Who cares? Maybe we have the CEO sit down and record some generic videos that you can send at different touch points as part of your cadence, right? Or maybe we align you with someone in customer success earlier on in the sales conversations that is more animated and better on video, that can start involving themselves in the conversation in a meaningful way, right? Because, tools like that, guiding your customer, that's all that we're talking about here, is like, we're not in sales anymore, man. We're here to help. We're here to prescribe. We're here to guide. If we're going to be a good guide, there's a lot of different ways that we can guide someone through something, but we got to give them a map. The map has to be, this is where you are today, and this is where we want to get to. And here's how we're going to get there. We can take the highway. We can take the back streets. We can take a subway, but we need to get there. And so I'm going to help you get there the best way possible, right? And using tools like video as the guide is really helpful. And if you aren't proficient in it, then find someone on your team you can align with that is, because ultimately, the number one thing I believe is that when somebody decides to move forward with you, it's because you've made it such an easy decision to say yes, that they know they're stupid not to. And part of making it easy isn't just making it easy to understand the deal. It was literally that you made it easy for them. Because I'll say something else a little controversial right now. I haven't said this out loud yet, so we'll see where this goes. This has been ruminating in my head. So the stats right now say that over 70% of the buyer's journey is completed before they ever talk to you. That's what the stats say. But I would challenge everyone listening to this, and I would challenge you right now. Like, when you really think about that, do you feel like the 10 most recent people that reached out to you after finding something about you in your business, right? Do you feel like those people actually understood exactly what you did enough that they didn't actually need you until now? Because I would assume that you probably feel like they should have reached out to you a lot earlier, because you probably feel like they've made a lot of assumptions that were inaccurate that you could have squashed a lot earlier and been a better guide. But because they have this distaste for the sales profession, they didn't want to have to go through it unless they felt that it was necessary to go through the pain of talking to you, right? Doesn't that make you feel good? But I'm looking at these stats and I'm going, I get it. I know that there's smarter people than me making these studies, but when I talk to people, they barely know what I do. And hey, listen, maybe it's a messaging issue on my website. All right. Maybe it is. Maybe we're innovating in a way where people just can't figure it out. But what I believe is that most people just don't have enough time and are just too darn lazy to actually spend the time they need to understand something enough to make a decision. And that's why sales will not be replaced. They still need someone to guide them. They still need someone to make sense of this, to clear up the chaos that they're creating in their own head around the deal. They need us for that. We need to get back to a place where they are willing to involve us earlier. I don't know if we will. Technology's trying to pull us away from being necessary at all, right? But at the end of the day, if we just stop being so darn salesy and start being more helpful and seeing our role as a better guide, a better tour guide, a better experience, right? Like we need to focus on what is this experience? And that again, that's a marketing/sales function. Experience is something that we're going to create. It's going to be something that's cohesive and like tied to our brand in some way. And you shouldn't have every salesperson creating their own memorable experience with their customers. Like it's an experience and a brand promise. And this needs to be something that we're all on the same page with. And we all need to be part of creating that. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat. And we're going to have some people that create incredible experiences and some people that create horrible experiences. And now we've got something else that we got to have Gary V make a video about fire your top whatever video on. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah. No. So a couple of things that you mentioned there that I think is worth pointing out, and specifically thinking of speaking to founders or leadership teams that are realizing that like the existing way of doing things needs to change for whatever reason, like number of leads are down, whatever KPI they're looking at, that is, causing them to go, something needs to change.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the gut reaction is to say, hey, we need to shake up the sales process, right? Or our sales team isn't performing the way that they should, or the sales team going, hey, we need to do more touches, or we need to, marketing needs to send more emails or whatever it is. And I think you mentioned this idea of creating experiences. And that is where I think we need to get back to. And I personally do not think the sales profession will ever be replaced because, to your point, like becoming a guide, yes, people, there's this whole idea of awareness, but if you don't know that the problem exists, then like someone has to tell you, like someone has to say, hey, if you have this problem, this is what the problem might be.
Yep. You
could try and do that one-to-one, or you could be seen as the person that understands this problem so well that if a call needs to be made, because this is a problem, you're the call, right? And you are the one that they come and say, hey, how should we even be thinking about this problem? That as a sales professional, that's what you want your first point of contact to be, right? Yep. So, when I think about myself, like folks, the call that I get is one of two things. Either A, we need marketing that supports our sales efforts, right? Or we need more leads, right? Like it's one of those two things. And the first conversation is, what are your business goals, right? And then it's an ongoing discussion around, let's really redefine the problem, because now we're moving down, path to see if this is going to be a good fit. And if it isn't a good fit, like, I need the reputation of being the person that will tell you it's not a good fit. Here's some of the things you can do. If we're still stuck on leads, you want to go with Apollo, Seamless AI, or Lucia. Those are the 3 tools that can get you leads, right?
Yeah.
But if you want a good sales experience for people to be really comfortable with working with your organization, you need to think about it in a completely different way. And here's how you think about it. That's what my content is all about on LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
So I think, this is where marketing, and I'll challenge marketing folks to do this, like, you got to fall in love with the sales process. You got to fall in love with really helping salespeople understand, like, you really need to understand what they're looking at. Like, Reed Sandler, right? Reed never split the difference. Really understand, like, what makes a good sales process. When someone calls you to say, hey, they're trying to sell you some software solution, take the call, right? Like, understand, like, build empathy for the sales process, because the sales process is actually, and this is going to sound horrible, but it's true, a good sales function pays your salary.
Yep.
Right. So, if I were in your shoe, I would invest in making sure that I'm supporting that sales process as much as possible. Right. So again, like, really learning to love the sales process, and sales teams really spend some time, like, learning to love the marketing process. Like, why? Ask why. Yep. When a marketing person tells you this is our tagline, like, lean in.
Yep.
Ask, like, don't just dismiss it and go, I'll never say that. Go, like, why of all the information that I've brought to you, the market research that you've been doing, the information that you have on your side of the fence, why did you choose this as our tagline? And really understand why. Because at the end of the day, you two are going to come together and drive revenue for the organization. You got to be aligned. And this is how you get that alignment, is really building trust and empathy by doing the work to understand what the other person does.
Yep. I think that where this has always been something that I know is important is, one of the things I talk about a lot is the buyer's remorse that steps in no matter what we do, right? Everything, literally everything that any of us has ever bought, we've had a tiny amount of buyer's remorse within minutes of buying it. I buy things all the time that I'm like, did I need that? Like, really? Even simple things like a thing of beef jerky at the grocery store or something. I'm like, I really need that, or did I just see it at the checkout line? Did I need those Tic Tacs? I mean, I love them; they're delicious, but did I really need them? They were $1. Why do I have any remorse over that? It was $1, but still, you do. Now, when you're making a really big purchasing decision in a business, and all the things that need to be signed off, right? And the reality that before it gets signed off, somebody's putting their neck on the line for you. So somebody feels like, if this doesn't work, not only are you at blame, but I'm at blame, because I'm the one that is in closest proximity to them. I'm going to be the first head to roll if this doesn't work. So this better work. This is our whole budget for this year. This better work. Yeah, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. If we don't have that cohesive philosophy and messaging and operation throughout the business, that's when the second the deal is landed and it goes to the next team, whether it's onboarding, whether it's customer support, success, whatever it might be, project management, depends on your industry, right? But once the deal is landed and the salesperson has left the room, right? That's where the buyer's remorse starts creeping in for most people. And the second they sniff out anything that doesn't seem right, it starts getting crazy. I mean, how many deals have you landed in your life where within the first 30 days, before you've even started rolling out any sort of project implementation, somebody's got cold feet and said, is there any way to get out of that contract? Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I haven't heard anything about this. What do you mean? Is things not going well in implementation? Well, I mean, I haven't heard from our project manager in 2 weeks. I don't even know where he or she went. And this is a lot of money. And is there any way to get out of this? I just don't feel comfortable anymore. Like, you were great. You were great. But then you disappeared and now I don't feel so great. happens all the time. So, we need to make sure that all the teams are aligned in what the focus is, what the message is, and the promise that we make of the experience that it is. It can't just be a sales experience. It has to be a whole company experience. This is the experience of working with this business. This is what you can expect. Because if you like the experience during the sales process and then the experience changes in the customer support or customer success or whatever comes next, immediately your buyer's remorse starts getting bigger and bigger. And that doesn't mean that your experience in the sales process has to be like going to Disney World. It like every business has a different sort of customer base with different sort of expectations, with different sorts of desires for what the working relationship's going to be, right? But whatever you establish as the experience, when they decide to give you the trust to put their name on a dotted line, that needs to be the experience that you carry forward throughout. And so some would argue, and I'm one of them, that sales should not be removed from the room once the deal is landed, right? I've worked for companies that like, hey, we landed the deal. Go find your next deal. Get out of here. And it's like, no. No, I'm staying because I made them a lot of promises. And if I'm being honest, I don't even trust that you're going to do it. So I want to be here to make sure you do what I promised I was going to do for them. Right.
Yeah.
It's tough.
You're hinting at, this thing where that same idea of trust. People do business with people and people work with people and people have to trust people. Right. So, if I as a salesperson am going to say to, and this is something that we coach clients on, is like, if someone makes a promise over here, you need to know what that promise was. And, they shouldn't be making the promise without talking with you first, right? First of all. So that's why, customer success or customer retention or whatever it is needs to be a part of this conversation, because when the sales team can say with confidence that something is going to happen and they know that they have a clear line of communication that's open to the sales team and the sales team is going to check in and it's just a part of the onboarding process, right? So that everybody is aligned. But then the customer success team is able to go, hey, here's the expectation that was set. Here is what actually is happening right now. Here's where they are in the process. And as a part of that process, sales is somehow brought back in the loop just to say, hey, the thing that we promised to you, we're actually delivering and you're enjoying the experience. Because the next question is going to be, do you know anybody else that you trust or you would be comfortable making an introduction to, which is a part of the sales process that a lot of folks don't do. They kind of go, hey, we need net new logos. That's not net new, right? Like your referrals are going to be your biggest advocates because they have gone through the process that you are selling and have enjoyed the experience. So as a part of your sales process, if you have all those touch points from marketing to sales to now they're experiencing the purchase, they're going to be your biggest champions. Sales should be leveraging that relationship all day long.
Yep.
And you should all be aligned around that because that's how you build, that revenue engine, if you will. But, so often companies don't make that investment in working together because they think it's slowing them down, which it isn't.
Nope. Don't be so fast to abandon the person that had the biggest amount of trust. Right. That's what I always say. Just don't be so quick. Right. We can have a transition where they start getting comfortable with other people, maybe ultimately, eventually more comfortable with other people, which is great. But don't be so quick because it's just too abrasive. And also, yes, like we were talking about before, like you just said now, referrals are going to be the lifeblood of your business forever and ever and ever. And so few people, it's sad, it's true. So few people ever ask the question, are you happy with working with us? Yeah. You're happy with the experience? Yeah. Would you refer us to your friends and other people in your industry? Yeah, I would. Okay. Well, then how are we going to make that happen?
Right.
How many times does that conversation actually happen? It's so sad how little that actually happens. I don't know why people are so uncomfortable asking that. I ask it all the time. When I have customers that come in at my company, once we get them onboarded and trained, give them a couple months to start finding some wins. I don't want to ask for it too early, right? There's nothing I hate more than someone asking me for a referral before I even know whether or not they're worth what they say they're worth, right? Okay. I want proof first before I'm going to put my name on the line. But if I find out that what you do is actually meaningful and I'm actually like achieving my goals because of what you did for me, I will sing your praises all day long, right? And so I wait for that moment. I wait for a customer to call me up and say, hey, I just landed the biggest deal in my life. Or, wow, this actually works. That's my favorite one. Wow, this actually works. And I'm like, yeah, what did you think? Like, we just sat here and built something because it seemed fun. Like, of course it works.
But a bunch of vaporware.
I know, like, seriously, like I get that message all the time. It's so funny to me. Oh, this actually works. I just landed the biggest deal in my life. Okay, thanks. But when that happens, I say, do you know anyone else that you'd be willing to introduce me to? The only people that those types of customers will not be comfortable introducing you to are friends and colleagues that work in competing businesses in their same industry. Those are the only introductions that those people won't be comfortable making for you. Though I've even had people do that where they're like, yeah, my friend works at a company just like ours, over on the other side of town. I should introduce you to him. For whatever reason, they're comfortable making that intro, even though it might literally take money out of their pocket, which is really great. But all you got to do is ask. And if you've done what you said you were going to do, you've earned the right to ask. So just ask.
Exactly. And one thing I'll add to that is, and make it easy for them to do it.
Well, right? That's the big part.
Yeah. Like, give them a one pager, give them some tools so that it's easy for them to just forward the introduction.
Yep.
And you take it from there.
It's a big, and I talk to people about this all the time. I don't know if you're queuing me up for a sales reach pitch here, but I talk to people about this all the time with my platform because I have those pages in my platform. Yep. I call it the Friends of XYZ referral page. I coach all my customers on how to build these pages in their own platform so that literally all I have to do is record a custom video that says my friend X thought that we should have a conversation because of Y, right? That's it. The rest of the page is already built for me. But I make that link and I share it with that customer. And I just say, listen, here's your custom page for referrals. You can share this with literally anybody you want to, however you want to. Please just save it in your bookmarks on your phone or something. The next time you're having coffee and somebody brings it up, you can just quickly email this link to them.
Yep.
That's the thing we need to remember, because if you've ever made an introduction before, and I know you have, because I've received introductions from you, right? If you're going to do it the right way, you do it thoughtfully. And it is time intensive, and we are all busy people, right? And we know the formula. Hey, Josh, meet Dave. Dave's done this in his career and this in his career, and he likes doing this on the weekends, and his kids are awesome and A+ students, and he drives a Tesla, and he works at this company, and he's excelled. And it's like, do we really need to go to that length every time? Like, we do want to be meaningful, but at the same time, like, if that's the expectation, I think that's what's holding most people back from making introductions more than anything. So if we can equip our referral partners, whether it's an official referral partnership or not, if we can equip them to make it really easy to just say, hey, I know this guy, Josh, here, check this out. This will tell you everything you need to know. Done.
There you go.
5 seconds of your day. You're done. Yep. So anyway, make those efforts easy on your people. That's it.
Yeah, and that idea of having it handy too, like, you know, personally, I'm a huge fan of the Sales Reach platform for this reason, right? Like, you got the bookmark, say, hey, people like links. You can send it as a text message. You can send it via LinkedIn. You know, we've met. Hey, you mentioned that you have this problem. I'm going to send you a resource. You know, if it's set up correctly, and this is where marketing can come in and be really helpful, is build it the right way. So that all you're doing then, you know, as the sales team is going off and building those relationships and so on, you say, hey, next time you have an opportunity to you know, ask for a referral, use this, right? Use this link. And if you need to swap it out because things change or the environment changes or something, like, Marketing should be constantly keeping that up to date so that it's useful and relevant at all times, right? Yeah. That's how the two work closely together.
That's the biggest. Dude, we could talk forever, and we should probably stop pretty soon here because people are going crazy. But this is a fun one. This is, I mean, what you're getting at. There was a study recently, 65%. They asked sales professionals, if someone asks you to send them information, do you know where to find it? Okay, simple. Yeah. This is like the most simple, basic part of your role, because every conversation I've ever had in my life ends with, hey, sounds great. Can you send me some information? Like, that's how every sales conversation ends. 65% of salespeople said they don't know where to find information to share with people.
Right.
65%. What? And one of the things that I still chuckle about today is, when I'm getting people set up or when I'm giving demos of our platform, I will ask them, like, okay, so you're sending stuff to people all day long. Yep, I am. Okay, where are you finding that information? I want to know, because it helps me with the development of our product and to understand how people, whatever. You would not believe the high percentage of sales professionals that I talk to every day and customer success teams that have decided that the company's organizational platform, whatever the structure is too challenging, and they're no longer going to use it. So what they've done is decided to start downloading things out of it onto their desktop to make it easier to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And the big challenge, the big problem with this makes marketers cringe. Marketers love their organizational folders because they can try to keep everything up to date and make sure that sales and customer success are always sharing the most recent version of everything. Well, guess what? If they're saving it on their desktop, you no longer have control over what version of what they're sharing. Right. And you don't even have any insights on what they're sharing unless you have your CRM set up to be monitoring the assets and all that stuff. But regardless,
they've made the logo bigger and you don't even know.
You don't even know. I mean, and this is a huge problem. I was doing a setup call with someone once, and I said, so what are you most typically sharing with people? And he was like, oh, I always share this deck. I always share this deck. And I was like, great, where do you keep that deck? And he's like, oh, it's right here on my desktop. And I was like, whoa, cool. Okay, so you always share this. How long have you worked at this company? He goes, 4 years. He opened up the deck, and it was date stamped in his folder. It was a 3.5-year-old deck. And it was like a general capabilities deck with customer testimonials and case studies and stuff in it. And I was like, don't you think in the last 3.5 years that your marketing team has found other things that they deemed more impressive than anything that's in that? Like, I guarantee if I were to reach out to your head of marketing and say, what's the best deck you have for this stage of the sales conversation, they'd be like, oh yeah, use this deck. I just finished this last month. I just updated it from one that I had updated a month ago. Oh, well, did you know your sales team's using one from 3.5 years ago that has your old logo on it, that has your old tagline on it, that has a case study that focuses on a challenge that you don't even claim to solve for anymore? That's a problem, right? So again, this is where the alignment of sales and marketing, just having conversations. If marketing was, and that story I just told, that was a huge company. I won't mention the company name because I don't want anyone to be, but it was a huge company. This person should know better. And if they're listening right now, he knows who I'm talking about. But if that person's marketing team had even spent 5 seconds reaching out and saying, I want to understand sales. I want to understand what you do every single day.
Yep.
What do you most frequently send to someone? I just asked one question and I just learned immediately that I need to have an intervention with this entire sales team and figure out, whoa.
Buyer enablement intervention. I'm feeling that, dude.
Yeah. What are we sharing here? Like, what you sent? What?
Yep.
That, I mean, come on.
No,
so it's easy. It's easy. We just need to stop overcomplicating it. Literally, okay, so here we go. So here's the challenge for anyone listening on the call. If you're in marketing, reach out to someone in sales, and I don't even care who it is. Reach out to someone in sales right now and say, would you mind sitting down for 15 minutes with me to teach me about sales and to teach me about your process in this organization? I want to see if there's anything I can do to help the sales team better, and I want to use you as a guinea pig. If you're in marketing, do that tomorrow. If you're in sales, I want you to reach out to someone in your marketing team. I don't care who it is. I want you to reach out to someone in your marketing team, and I want you to say, I want to start creating more stories around what we do here through myself on social channels. And I need some help coming up with some creative ways to go about this and to figure out if I need a graphic, where I should get that graphic. If I want to do a video, what tools I should be using. If I need to create a content calendar, how I could even start with that. What are some topics that you think from a marketing perspective would be powerful for me to stay, even though I'm making this for myself, in my own perspective? What are the topics I should be focusing on based on the research you've done? Just do those two things.
Yep.
Right? It's a 15-minute conversation on both sides that you've probably not had your entire career. Anyone listening, right? So just do it. Simple. All right. There you go.
Easy peasy. All right. So we're definitely going to have a round two, but we could definitely keep this conversation going. But before I let you go, we always like to ask our guests to share a resource or book that they enjoy or would recommend based on the topic or anything else. And you had mentioned that you're gonna surprise the audience. So let's hear it.
So here's the thing. You're gonna hate this answer because I know you, and you're a big book guy. You're a big business book guy. I don't think I know anyone that's read more business books than you. Okay. You gift books. You've gifted me a book. I've read one business book in my entire life.
I hope it's the one that I got you.
I haven't finished that one. I haven't. The only business book that I ever read in my life was the 10 Immutable Laws of Branding.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I read it probably 20 years ago. Okay. Business books, for the most part. The other one that I read most recently, the one I sat down to read most recently, was Benioff's Salesforce. Benioff's book that he wrote about Salesforce just recently. It was. Yep. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I made it 3/4 of the way through, and I couldn't. It started getting too arrogant, and I had to just part ways with it. But the first part of it was actually brilliant. The first half I thought was really excellent.
Yeah, as long as you get something out of them, you don't need to finish the books.
It's good. But here's what I'm more focused on.
Okay.
I believe that sales is not a skill that you can teach. And that's part of why I don't read sales books. I just don't think it's a skill that you can teach. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that it's an innate ability that someone has. I do believe that there are things that you can improve upon through education and practice. And I believe that there are people that do better when they have guidance from a book telling them you should be doing this. Mm-hmm. I'm a very introspective person. Mm-hmm. Okay. I like to just pay attention to the things happening around me. And if I figure out something's working or if I see something that interests me, I dive into it naturally. We've talked about this a lot, growth mindset. Yeah. Right? Growth mindset is the most important thing that you can possibly have, right? Just being open and willing to try to learn something new. Mm-hmm. So where I actually find my favorite sales training is just studying how people think. And if you were to say, what is the book or the author that helps you think most about how somebody thinks or how the world thinks or how the world works? David Sedaris.
All right.
I love no book more than the book Naked by David Sedaris. And I would recommend that everybody reads the chapter called Big Boy. And if you read that story, it's all short stories. David Sedaris is hilarious. It's all short stories. If you read that story and just think about it metaphorically about what it actually stands for in society and how people react to situations, that's where you start to think, okay, well, how can I approach people differently about that? Right? Because that's what books about how to win deals and influence people are all about. It's just, how do you get to the core of how somebody is? How do you understand somebody quickly enough to become relatable, to become their best friend, to help sway them to move in your direction, right? Mm-hmm. That's what so much sales training is about. It's just understanding human psychology, human need, right? And then how to use that understanding of it in your favor. I find some of it very, very gross personally. Because I don't like using those powers that way. Right. Or
But
at least
it's important to understand them.
But that's what it is. Just understanding basic human psychology is just my favorite thing, because then when you're having a conversation with somebody, you can start to see through their lens so much faster. And also I like stories like that because I like telling stories as well. Right. And I find that, storytelling is really powerful in sales, whether it's through your emails, whether it's through the videos you send to people. Most importantly, when you're entertaining a customer, like if you can make that a memorable experience by telling some fun stories and having some good conversation, like that's why so many deals are landed over martinis at the local steak shop, right? It's a good social hour where you become friends and you become allies, and you want to see each other succeed. So that's what I do. I'm going to read the book you gave me. I just haven't yet. And I will, though. It's right behind me. It's right on that table right there. Yeah.
There you go.
I know.
Man, I cannot think of a better way to have landed this plane, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was great being on. Speaking of books, can I do a quick shout out for our friend Kurt Schmidt? I mean, come on.
Sir.
He just wrote a book. I mean, if the world didn't think they needed to know what he thought before, now they definitely know they didn't need to know what he thought before. But now we have a book. Which is good. I love the Foundry team. I love Kurt. I worked for Kurt. I worked with the Foundry team right before I launched this business. Carolyn over at Foundry, right? She used to call me handguns, right? She used to make the handgun sign like this because that's what people think of sales, right? So whenever I think of like negative perceptions of sales, I always think of Carolyn making fun of me, calling me handguns. It's one of my favorite memories there. But regardless, yeah, Kurt, what's his book called again?
It
Networking,
is called,
Intentional.
So I started it and like literally couldn't put it down.
Well, he just put it out.
Yeah.
Like yesterday or 2 days ago was his release
party.
When he
dropped it, I grabbed the Kindle version. It was available right away.
Oh,
so the little book of networking.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's exactly what we've been talking about is like, how do you build authentic relationships without it feeling forced, pressured? Yeah.
He's a master of it. I mean, collaborating with him on that topic while I worked at that organization was hugely beneficial for me in my own career. So, so I'll definitely drop that one. I'll read that. I'll read that book.
We're gonna put those two books in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Let's do that.